Yesterday was undoubtedly a good day for Labour, with Sir Keir Starmer's opposition party celebrating two by-election victories in safe Tory seats. In Wellingborough, Northamptonshire, the party took Peter Bone's former seat, which he had held with a majority of more than 18,000. And in Kingswood, South Gloucestershire, Labour overturned an 11,000 Conservative majority. But are Labour celebrating victory too soon? Let's get the views of former government minister and radio and television broadcaster Edwina Currie. Hi, Edwina. Now, we know by-elections are often about giving the incumbent a bloody nose, but BBC elections expert Sir John Curtis says that the swing from the Tories to Labour in Wellingborough was the second largest in any post-war election. That sounds like more than just a protest vote.
Yeah, well, if I'd been in Wellingborough, I'd have probably stayed at home just like most of the electorate did. I mean, Peter Bone was an idiot. His girlfriend was an idiot, and wanting to stand was a really stupid thing to do. The selection committee that chose her are all idiots. And Conservative headquarters were absolutely crazy to let that happen. They should have seen that disaster happen in their headlights and should have done something about it and made sure that at least we had a candidate that we could kind of warm to. I mean, there was no campaigning there of any kind. It's absolutely crackers to let that happen. You can't let a seat like that go by default. So I think we've been well and truly punished in Wellingborough. And I think it was deserved. When it comes to Kingswood, I remember that happening back in, 1987, because we won Kingswood in 83 when Margaret Thatcher had her second victory, and we lost it in 87 when she had her third victory. So it's always been a bit of a chop and change seat. And I think, as other people have said, turnout was awful. I mean, turnout below 40% is dire. When I fought a county council election seat here 2 years ago, just a local council seat, the turnout was 55%. I think we were quite proud of that, actually, that, it generated that much interest. But there were two by-elections where the main result, the top vote was none of yous. None of yous. You're all the same. And that's a real problem. I think it's particularly a problem, obviously, for the government. But my advice to Rishi and the gang in Downing Street is actually just stick to your guns. Keep doing what you know to be the right thing. Because, if you change now and we find ourselves having to do a U-turn, first of all, that's copying what Keir Starmer keeps doing. But also, if we do U-turns and we still lose, then you've got a lose-lose situation. At least if you do the right thing, there's a reasonable hope that the economy might improve quite rapidly. And then we've got a good case to put the electorate in, probably about 8 months. Ooh.
Well, Edwina, I tend to agree with you, notwithstanding the scale of the losses yesterday, which ought to concern the Conservatives. You do have the fact that by-elections do tend to get lost by the incumbent governing party. It is an opportunity for voters to demonstrate their displeasure with what the government are up to. But when it comes to either a poll in the spring or in the autumn, it will be a choice of Sunak versus Starmer, and that will focus minds, won't it?
Well, I think it's appalling that we seem to be trying to fight an American-style election here. I mean, I can see why, but we don't have a presidential system. We choose a government based on voting for somebody at our local level. And where I am in the High Peak, we've got a wonderful Conservative MP, young man who works extremely hard, and I'd very much like to see him there, whatever is going on in Westminster. And to constantly, this is a mistake here, I think, Mark. You're a highly intelligent man. You will understand the subtleties of what I'm about to say. That we have had 5 prime ministers in the year since 2016. That has not actually been a very good idea. It's not done the country any good. It's certainly not done the political parties any good. And of course, even within those administrations, you get rapid changes in ministers, which means that you have hardly anybody in the posts of importance pulling the levers of power in departments like education or health or wherever it is, who've been in the job for more than 5 minutes. And let me tell you, it takes a while to get to know how things work and how you can actually make things happen. So changing again, which I gather some Conservatives want to do, would it be a Wellingborough operation? Absolutely stupid, idiotic thing to do. We should make sure that we are doing the right thing in government, the right thing for the country, putting the country's needs very much to the forefront. And I think then we've got a really good case to put to the electorate in due course. I'm quite sure that that 20-point gap will narrow when it actually comes to polling day.
OK, let me bring, if I can, Edwina, my brilliant Friday friends in on this conversation, Nina Mishkov and Mike Parry. Nina, do you think our system is now more presidential? Do you think that when it comes to the election, people will be voting Starmer versus Sunak rather than Labour versus Tory?
No, I don't think that. I mean, we mentioned this earlier. I said it's not a presidential, competition. It is election. It is about the party. Although the figureheads have to have charisma. We discussed it with Tony Blair had charisma. Keir Starmer has not. But I think the problem is, Edwina, don't you agree that the apart from the young man that you talk about, that the actual standard of politicians that we have at the top in the Tory party now are so grossly inferior to the people that were around in your day, it's quite impossible to think how they could possibly continue.
Oh, we used to get that said about us, of course, as when we first arrived. Oh, my goodness me, actually got women in the House of Commons now. I feel like, everything is falling to bits. We turned out to be good at the job, partly because we had Margaret Thatcher, but partly also because she and many of us had very clear ideas, and we had the time, we had the opportunity to put those ideas into operation. Now, what's happened, I think, more recently is that with COVID, and then with the Ukraine war, and now with what's happening in Israel and in Gaza, we're suffering all sorts of huge international shocks. And that's created inflation. It's created a kind of a break between what we're all familiar with and what we are now facing. This kind of PTSD going on, it seems to me. Everybody wants some easy answers. There aren't any easy answers.
Mike Parry, the clock's against us, but I detect, reading between the lines of what you said this evening, that you detect a potential political upset in a few months' time.
Well, no, look, Edwina Currie is a great Conservative for me because she's small c Conservative, We're labelled far right, but we're just sort of a bit of centre-right. We want Conservative policies. Now, Edwina, if I'd have been in those constituencies last night, I'd have been wandering the earth trying to find somebody who expounded Tory policies to vote for, and having not found anybody, I might have voted for reform. But hopefully, just to shock the Tory party into getting their act together for the election when it comes. And I hope reform is just a slight bubble of resentment and disaffection from Tory voters who I believe are there as a silent majority who will come back.
Edwina, briefly, if you can, closing thoughts.
Closing thoughts. I think there's something in what Mike says. I think reform is probably like the drain cleaner, the nasty caustic stuff that you put down the drain to unblock it. But actually, it doesn't run the water system and it doesn't run the sewage system. All those basic systems, all those things that we need and want, the way the economy is run, the way that welfare is run, the way that enterprise is encouraged and so on. All those things actually depend on having a Tory government in future.
Edwina, always great to have you on the show.